Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second session of What's New in English here at Education Perfect. My name is Irini Limnatidis. I am the English implementation expert on the team, and I've used English Perfect in my classroom, so I'm fairly familiar with how to incorporate it into lessons and how to use it for different purposes in an English setting. If you have any queries at all, please feel free to get in touch with me on my direct dial, which I'll pop into the chat, or feel free to send me an email at irini@educationperfect.com. Alternatively, you can ask any questions to the person who's looking after your department, and they should be able to give you a rundown themselves of any of your questions. So we'll jump straight into it. This particular webinar is focused on the new features of English. So I'll take you through our content library as a start, because that's where most of our content lives. It is notable that the formative assessment campaign, which we're pushing at the moment to really get teachers in the know-how of what our formative assessments can do for them, is not necessarily a key feature of English, but is really a great feature to keep an eye out on, because as English teachers, we really value that growth data, and I think it's really fantastic to have a look at and become familiar with if you're not. English specifically, as you can see, we've come to the content library and we've come to the English literature. You'll see that our folders have been renamed in some versions. So Wide Reading Literacy Library used to be our reading library. We've got a few folders down here that, particularly for my Count My Schools folder, I've renamed here. And our leveled folders, as you can see here, have been renamed to match the strands of the Australian curriculum. Now, these have actually been customised per state. So if you do have a contact in a different state and you're trying to sort of work out why your screens don't look the same, that's probably why. Each of the different states in Australia has adopted the Australian curriculum in a different way. So this particular layout here, the strands that relate to the New South Wales and Victorian syllabus. So that's why those have been renamed there, but the content is still the same and, of course, growing. So if we have a bit of a look through our main folders, obviously these folders show up here because they're the most popular folders. We do have, in case you aren't familiar with them already, language conventions and reading diagnostic tests, which are great tests for a spread of data for general English skills across the year level. We've got them for year 7 through to year 10. And we have both a pre and a post test for semester 1 and semester 2. Now, some teachers do like to use them per term. If that is the case, then you've got sort of a term 1 and a term 2 set, which puts you a little bit short for term 3 and 4. The data collection for these pre and post tests, I think, is much more efficient in a semester spread. We know that usually in a semester we cover probably 2 English programs, and the analysis that you'll get from a single term may not be effective enough to see exactly how the students have grown. So that's why we've only got a pre and post for the 2 semesters of the year, just to give you that time and space to let the kids improve. Now, the beauty of these tests is that we do have them for year 7 to year 10. So if you have any students that are really nailing the previous year, or perhaps they're really struggling with the year that you've given them, you can give them the year below or the year ahead, or perhaps 2 years ahead. They're incredibly gifted, and they won't actually know the test that they're receiving. So they won't see that file path that says it's year 8. They'll just see whatever you decide to call that test, which is a really fantastic option for students at different levels. And similarly with the year 7 to 10 diagnostics for reading comprehension, you'll see that we've got a pre and a post. So they're really fantastic tests to just gauge a spread of students across your year levels. Of course, we have our NAPLAN packages, which are really fantastic for year 7 and year 9, and then NAPLAN spelling is a bit of a focus spelling area with different activities relating to different areas of spelling. Just having a quick look at the year 7 area, we do have some practice tests for reading, writing, and language conventions. Writing being pretty fantastic. We're actually continuously building on these as well, both for persuasive and narrative. And just so you know that within the NAPLAN package, in the writing area, you'll notice that in the actual box, there's no autocorrect, there's no grammar correct, there's no suggestions for writing. So you're really getting a very accurate understanding of how the students are expressing themselves in the written form, which is pretty awesome. So these we have in our practice test section. We do have our remedial tasks in a certain area, so that if you did want to perhaps set one of these lessons as revision in your class, because you could see that through your practice test, the results came back quite short for a lot of students. You could cover these as a lesson. All you'd need to do is assign it rather than assess it. And then, of course, as with all of our lessons, you can assess it after you have made it a lesson, which is pretty great. So we have those for all three areas of our remedial tests. Now, the minimum standards is pretty fantastic because it allows you to set your remedial work for students based on their results of NAPLAN. So if you can see that they haven't actually reached that minimum standard and then you get their results from the actual NAPLAN test itself, you can go into these areas here depending on where they were coming up a bit weak, and you could assign them some of these as lessons or perhaps even as assignments to help them improve in those areas. So we've got those for Year 7 and Year 9. My recommendation would be that if you had Year 7 students who are really nailing that Year 7 content, I would just be excelling them to that Year 9 content to really build their ability to do better in that test. Basic minimum standards aside, really want to be able to push the kids to their full extent. So the beauty of having those both in there is that you're catering to both those year levels and of course extending students if they need it. Now we do have Year 3 and Year 5 in development. They are being resourced at the moment, so they are on the carousel for future. We can't give a guaranteed date on that yet, but they are being resourced, so keep an eye out for those later in the year. Spelling and vocab, which is a pretty popular area, has a really wide selection of spelling lists. We do like to create spelling lists that are specific to certain holidays, and we can even help you customize one for your school if you've got something important coming up. You can create your own really simply, or we can help you put one together, but just so that you know, you can select certain words and create lists out of the list that we already have. So as you can see with the Fry spelling words, the list is quite extensive. We've got Fry spelling words for all of these lists that obviously increase in their difficulty. So you can pick one of these lists and customize it to your own liking as well. Of course, our wide reading literacy library, which is constantly being populated, is a really fantastic resource for online reading. Our resources aren't leveled. The benefit of that is that you can actually gauge a little bit better exactly where the students are at with their reading and comprehension level. And the other beauty of these is that not only do all of them have a really engaging visual resource that students can engage with that has been made has been customized for EP, so it's quite unique to our program. But a lot of our texts are actually, as you'll be able to see here, really well spaced out, really clear and easy to read or to view. And they're also numbered, which makes it easier for kids to sort of follow where they are if they were to, finish the lesson at a later date and wanted to stop halfway, or perhaps you've got a student who does struggle with their reading path, and so it just helps them keep themselves on track. Now, the other beauty of English lessons, in case you haven't noticed already, is that they are structured by Bloom's taxonomy. So we do have here on the side an indication of the text being at the start, surface skills going into more difficult skills, inferring deeper meaning, really getting the students to think at a more critical and more analytical level, and then offering an extended response at the end. Now, all of our lessons have the ability to be customized. So as a teacher, you can choose the edit function if you like, and you can remove the extended response if perhaps that was something you wanted to do in class, or maybe seeing as this is an advertisement, you want them to create their own advertisement. That's perfectly fine. That's really easy to do if you click that edit button, but just so you know that that feature is there. Now, all of our texts are categorized by text type, and there is a really wide variety of topics that each of our text types covers. So you can see that we've got a wide range of common, so Stone Soup is a fable, text types, as well as our own original ones, and something that I used to find really hard to find as an English teacher, non-fiction as well, which can really get on board your students who perhaps have very different interests to your categorical English studies. Our spoken texts are pretty fabulous as well. They make for really great stimulus for debates, which is really fantastic, and they also make for really differentiated learning when it comes to the modes of English, so being able to listen to those texts. Now, they're just our main folders. We'll come and have a look down at our leveled folders. Now, of course, you can find all the content from any of these folders in any of the year levels. So if it exists in year 7, it will also exist in year 8, perhaps at a different level, but the content exists everywhere. So if we had a quick look at writing, we would get the different kinds of writing, and our writing package is actually being resourced at the moment, so we'll have some more resources for writing, specifically NAPLAN writing, in the very near future. So you can see that our folders are opening out to the right as per usual, and we have a wide range of different texts for each of these different topics. A lot of these you may already be familiar with, but if not, definitely worth a play. What I'd really like to point out in our leveled folders, and you'll be able to see this in a moment, is our tagging of all our lessons for the Australian curriculum. So if you typed in an Australian curriculum code, all of the lessons that are relevant to that code will pop up. So we actually have about 3/4 of the Australian curriculum covered, which is wonderful. And if you just see with the ACEL code, we've got a really wide selection there of texts that relate to this curriculum code. And the more specific the code, the more specific the lesson you will get that comes up. So say, for example, literature as opposed to language conventions. The codes are different, and if you typed in those codes, you would get the lesson that is relevant for you. Now, just a bit of an insight. There are a lot of lessons for year 7 and 8 for that foundational English. The ones that we don't have as many of are the ones that are a little bit harder to generate marking for. So we're thinking more at a year 9 and 10 level for abstract responses, and really getting the kids to think more deeply and critically about the ideas of say, a concept. But our lessons are being constantly resourced in a lot of these other areas, and if there are any updates, we will tell you about them in our newsfeed, which is here at the front. So you'll see that our monthly matters is being actively updated this year. So we had a Valentine's Day themed lesson, which is very cute. So I would definitely recommend that. We have new text in our English library, which is pretty fantastic as well. Series of webinars, which is a little bit, inception, me telling you about a webinar during a webinar, but here are our dates. There's a schedule there. And as a final point, we have our English teachers Facebook group, which is being adminned by both Jimmy Bowens, who's the head of English, and myself. We share tips and tricks on how to incorporate EP English into your classroom, and we encourage teachers to share their responses to the program and how exactly they're using it in their classroom with each other. Our newsfeed will give you information on our other topics as well, as we see fit to let you know about, but they are the main features of English that have been released. So I can see that we are a little bit short of time. We are getting a little bit close to 7 and the webinar is scheduled to go to 7:30. So I will log myself back to the home screen, and I'm more than happy to hang around until 7:30 to see if we have any more respondents or any questions come through, and I will repeat the session if need be. Otherwise, that's me checking out, and if you need anything else, please get in touch with the person looking after your department and let us know.